What's going on? I'm Patrick Jaguar, the Cosmic Alchemist, and welcome to my 2020 astrological forecast and predictions video. So originally I was going to do two separate videos. I was going to do a January video and a 2020 video, but there was so much overlap, it just seemed redundant, so I figured I'd just kind of roll it all together because some of the astrological events of January are going to have a lot of bearing on 2020 as a whole, and 2020 is going to set the tone for the whole decade of the 2020s. So I figured I would just do the 2020 video, and January would kind of come along for the ride. So 2020 it's a really big year. A lot of people say this. They say this every year. They say it's going to be an extreme month, an extreme year. Well, we live in extreme times, and it's like every month is a big deal, and 2020 is definitely a big deal, and this year it's going to make or break everybody, individually, within their communities, as countries, and on every level. It's going to make or break people, and it's all about. It all comes down to whether we took, the cues. We took our cues from, unconsciously or consciously, from this last solar eclipse that happened in Sagittarius on 26th of December last year. So, 3-4 weeks ago. And so, what that eclipse was all about was, it was all about where are our belief systems and what are we doing with those beliefs. And how are we acting on those beliefs? Because Sagittarius is all about belief systems, philosophies, ideology, worldviews, and then religion and spirituality are part of this too. So there was a pileup of planets for that eclipse. And, K2 was the node of the moon that happened to be in Sagittarius. And so K2 was, conjuncting the sun. So you also had Saturn and Pluto, and you had Jupiter in there, among others, Mercury. So you had like a 6-7 planet pileup during that eclipse. So since K2 was the planet, the shadow planet that was eclipsing the sun, that eclipse had some overtones of extremism and just sort of obsession with purity and with getting things a certain way so that they can be pure and perfect. And then you had Saturn and Pluto in there, and Saturn is the enforcer, and Saturn enforces your life path and keeps you honest and makes sure that you're being the real you, and Pluto, the god of the underworld, makes you deal with things that you don't want to deal with, that you're procrastinating about, that you're in denial about, or that were just plain hidden from you. And then Jupiter is the higher consciousness. So, especially you put Jupiter and K2 in the same sign, there's potential for extremism, for ideological extremism, and there's also potential too for, great spiritually driven inspiration. So, an eclipse or any other conjunction just gives potential energy, and we can go one way or the other. We can, really take the path of unity and the path of positivity, or we can be fearful and be negative and and follow the fear. So it just depends what you want to do with it. So that eclipse was all about where are our belief systems and how are we living those out. So then we start 2020. 10 days in, January the 10th, we get a lunar eclipse in Gemini. So Gemini is all about communication and media and mass media, TV, writing, you name it. And so Rahu was eclipsing the moon in Gemini. So Rahu deals with, in part, Rahu deals with information technology, technology of all kinds, but also with deceit and with illusions. So that lunar eclipse was taking the cue from the solar eclipse in December about, extremism and belief systems. The lunar eclipse was setting the stage for events that show us how, through communication and mass media, we've been manipulated and we've been deceived. So it'll take a little time for that to play out, but those two eclipses, solar and then lunar, really set the stage for 2020. So when I say this year is going to make us or break us, it's all about where were your belief systems in 2019 and how are you going to make decisions based on those in 2020. And the other part of it is based on your belief systems and your worldview. Did you allow somebody to manipulate you into doing something, into fighting for their cause, and really into doing things that are very not you, that are not genuine to who you are? So based on how you answer those questions, that's how your year and really your decade is going to be, and possibly your next 2 decades. So it's kind of heavy, but those are the times you live in sometimes. So 2020 is going to be a year of transformation, of healing, of cleansing, of reinvention. It's going to be a year of discovery, of scientific discovery, and possibly even historical, archaeological type discovery. I think science is going to make inroads into holistic thinking. They're going to meet up, and there's going to be some really cool medical and scientific discoveries. 2020 is also going to be a year of revelation and disclosure. A lot of very dark secrets are going to be revealed and disclosed. So secrets that have been kept hidden from us for years and possibly even centuries and millennia. We're going to find out that a lot of very powerful people were involved in some really dark, illegal things. And when this happens, some of these people are going to be our heroes, are going to be people who in our minds could do no wrong. So this year definitely has some hair on it. So it's like I've been saying for the past year, nobody is going to, when these changes come, when these revelations come, nobody is going to say, I told you so. So it doesn't matter what party you're part of, what social movement, what religion, you're not going to say, I told you so, and your side is not going to get to rule the future, and they're not going to determine what the world is going to look like for the next several years or decades or centuries or whatever. Everybody is going to see that their heroes were not quite who they thought they were. And this has been building. All kinds of celebrities are coming down. Harvey Weinstein's finally going to court for sexual misconduct. He can't put it off any longer. And Harvey Weinstein really wasn't anyone's hero, but he represents the film industry. He represents Hollywood, and a lot of people aspire to be part of all that and aspire to be big in it, and and they want to get close to him and use his connections to advance their own careers. So Hollywood is definitely coming down here. Hollywood's been kind of slowly bleeding. Netflix and Hulu and HBO have sort of been just cutting them out of the picture and doing their own thing, making films, making shows. And so we're seeing this with Prince Andrew. The royals in Britain still have a big following, and he's really stepped in it. He really misconducted himself with those young women who Jeffrey Epstein set himself up with, and so the royal family is not looking good. Prince Harry's breaking away, and I think he's sick of the pageantry of it. He wants his own life. He wants his life back, and big thing that's going on is this whole business with the impeachment. And really the hidden thing in this whole impeachment is that Donald Trump getting impeached is like being given a speeding ticket at the Daytona 500. It's like, look who this is coming from. It's coming from 500 of the most dishonest, really slimy people in the whole country. So, what we're going to find out through all this is that Ukraine was basically the Democrats' version of the invasion of Iraq. So you go back to 2003, the invasion of Iraq, you had a young, naive president who was being manipulated by an older, more experienced, and more seasoned vice president who just basically told the president to just kind of go take it easy and I'll handle this foreign stuff for you. So, and that's what Joe Biden did with Obama, and he really led that whole thing. And the government of Ukraine, it wasn't overthrown because of corruption or human rights. It was because the EU is not doing well, and the EU keeps trying to suck in countries to be part of it so that they can take control of the country's wealth. They can pull it into the European Central Bank. So Ukraine was a close trading partner with Russia. And the other thing with Ukraine is historically Ukraine was 1/3 of its modern size, and the other 2/3 were actually Russia, the eastern 2/3 of Ukraine. So, and Stalin created modern Ukraine. So there's definitely some legitimate territory dispute there because the people running Russia know that the Soviet Union was a great misfortune and did really bad things to their country, and they know Wall Street was behind it. Incidentally, that's a whole other video. So another thing with Ukraine is Ukraine was buying Russian weapons, military weapons, and now that once Ukraine got a new government that was Western friendly, they've been buying all kinds of American-made weapons, and these weapons companies were lobbying Democratic members of Congress to change the regime in Ukraine so that they could sell Ukraine American weapons. And then on top of it, you have the Biden, Pelosi, the Romney families, and I think it was John Kerry's stepson. They were all making millions and millions of dollars in Ukraine. So the whole thing's completely crooked. It's just like what Dick Cheney and those guys did with all the no-bid contracts in Iraq. It's the same damn thing. Burisma Oil. And Joe Biden did a quid pro quo with the president of Ukraine, and he said, if you don't fire this prosecutor who's investigating my son, you're not getting $1 billion in foreign aid. And that it was in energy aid, so that $1 billion got turned around, and a lot of it went into this Burisma Holdings, which was this natural gas company that Joe Biden's son was an executive in. I think he was making something to the tune of $500,000 per month. So, and God knows how much.
Or others to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. Well, son of a bitch.
So we're all going to find out that there are no shining white knights, and we're going to find out what our leaders are really made of. So another thing for 2020 is I'm seeing the the fall of two-party politics. I think these two parties are basically, this is going to be an ugly election season. They're basically going to kill each other. I think the Democratic Party is going to fall first because, the one different thing that they do is they act like that they're compassionate and that, they're all about the people. The Republican Party doesn't really take time to do that, but the Democrats do. But, they're hypocritical. It's like Malcolm X said the difference between a conservative and a liberal is that, a conservative is like a wolf and a liberal is like a fox, and they both eat lamb, but the fox knows how to smile, and it gets closer to the lambs much more easily. So the lambs let their guard down, and then when they let their guard down, the fox swoops in and it's eating lamb chops for dinner. A wolf has a much harder time catching a lamb because it sees the wolf coming and it knows what the wolf is all about. It doesn't have a smile on its face. So, the wolf doesn't hide its nature. And, that's the way conservatives are. They really don't hide their nature. They do what they do. But, the liberal politicians, left-wing politicians, they smile a lot. And they fool people with smiles, So these left and right-wing politicians are really no different from each other. It's just that the left wing and the progressives like to smile, and people believe it, and they think that these politicians are their friends, but they're not. I don't care who they are. So, another prediction of mine, I think Donald Trump's going to win 2020, and nobody who can beat him is being put out there. Nobody that regular people who are just, working and raising children can relate to. So I think he's going to win, and I think, maybe in 2021, I think the Democratic Party is going to collapse. Something will take its place. The people who vote Democrat will have a different party, but I think it's run its course, and one of the things, Russiagate was really a cover for how the Democrats rigged their own primary in 2016. And they basically, the people wanted Bernie Sanders, but Wall Street wanted Hillary Clinton, so they rigged the primary. And Hillary got the nomination, and because of the superdelegates, whose votes counted for more, the ones that supported Hillary. So this was a court case for a little while, and basically the court ruled that the Democratic Party is a private corporation, and it doesn't have to follow its own rules of fair primary elections. The Republican Party is a corporation too, but they haven't been caught rigging their own primary. So, it went to court, and the court did nothing. The court said we can't do anything because the Democratic Party is a private corporation. So you can look this up on realprogressives.com. There's a news article. So, that is just as much of a national security threat as, supposed interference by the Russian government. So, and that's a funny thing too, is, people think this is the Russian government. It's actually private contractors that get involved in this kind of thing. The UK just had a general election, and Boris Johnson won, the Conservative Party, but it came out that both parties were hiring Russian contractors, former intelligence officers, to create misleading television and internet ads. So both parties were doing it. That's another thing that's going to come out in 2020. We're going to find that both parties were hiring these people to do these things. Russia has, since the fall of the Soviet Union, there have been a lot of out-of-work military people who became mercenaries, and then there were a lot of out-of-work intelligence professionals who basically became intelligence. They became an intelligence community for hire, intelligence agencies for hire. So that's the only Russian connection. Everyone thinks that, well, not everyone, but a lot of people think, then the media is telling people Vladimir Putin became the overlord of the United States. It's not the government of Russia. All this stuff's corporate. So that's that on the political front here. So another thing too that I see for 2020 is we're going to have collapse of government. Government is going to become less effective. There's going to be a lot of infighting in government, and various parties and leaders are going to be too busy fighting each other to actually govern. I also see a global economic depression. I see this starting around the 25th of November 2020. So I don't think a depression is going to kick off, but I think by that point in time, the news media is going to admit that the economy has actually not been good, hasn't been healthy for the past 10 years, even though the Dow keeps soaring. And the Dow just goes up to 25, 30,000 because people can't make money in the bank. They can't make money with bank accounts, CDs, treasury bills, so they have to gamble in the stock market, which is it's a white-collar casino for people who have MBA degrees. So, you know, when Jupiter comes into Capricorn with Saturn in November, I see that depression kicking off. And I think 2020 is going to be a year of revolt. We're going to see civil wars, riots, upheavals, and, you know, most prominently, we're going to see the fall of the Ayatollah in Iran. You know, Iran has been doing really horrible stuff to women for a long time. And this Iranian general, this Soleimani that was killed in a drone attack, his organization has arrested and tortured and, you know, likely raped a lot of women over the years, because a lot of women in Iran don't want to wear the headscarves. You know, and the headscarves, these hijabs are a symbol of oppression for women. They're a symbol of how women are second-class citizens in Islam. So, from what I can tell, I think Soleimani was given up to the United States military by Iranians. Because in Iran, you have the regular military, and then you have the Revolutionary Guards, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards. So they're kind of like the SS in Nazi Germany. You know, they were a political division that's separate from the military. So I think the Iranians are basically, they have an awesome country that has a lot of potential to be really prosperous and peaceful and a huge tourist destination. But it's a dump because it's ruled by these religious extremists who are, you know, they're totally oppressive towards women. So that country's coming down. You know, and there's potential for revolts and civil wars everywhere, and that's all up to the people in those countries. You know, if we decide to keep going the extremist route in our thinking, then we're going to have to face something like that. So we need to step back and realize that just because people subscribe to a different political party than we do doesn't mean that they're evil or they're stupid or they're monsters. You know, we have to remember that we're all in this together. So, and you know, another thing that I mentioned briefly a few minutes ago, you know, I'm seeing the mainstream of you know, the emergence of a spiritual science, you know, that's based more on holistic thinking. So I think big, you know, medical breakthroughs in physics, and you know, I think it's going to be similar to the spiritualist movement in the 1890s, where people were really getting into you know, learning about the afterlife and about spirituality and about how, you know, the human energy body works and how energy, you know, flows through nature. So I think we have potential to really, you know, just go into a whole new era, a better era. But the thing to bear in mind here is that these old dying institutions, you know, collapsing government, collapsing, you know, age of Pisces religions, you know, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and you know, the collapsing financial system, and even, you know, mainstream science, mainstream academia, they hide a lot of truth from the public, and they don't allow new information and new ideas to be explored. So these collapsing institutions are going to try to recruit people, and they're going to try to stoke our extremism to get us to defend them and to prop them up. So we have to be ready for that. You know, make sure that the responsibilities you take on are the ones you want. Make sure you're dedicating yourself to things you really believe in, because Saturn, at the end of this month on January 27th, is going into Capricorn. So Saturn is at home in Capricorn. It's a home sign that it rules over, and it's all about dedication, it's about sacrifice, and it's about responsibility. So make sure that the responsibilities you take up are the ones that you really want. And so make sure you're not doing it because somebody recruited you to fight for their cause. And make sure you're doing what you want and you're being who you want to be. If you really want to follow in someone's footsteps who came before you, like a parent or a grandparent or a role model, make sure that's really you. Just don't follow in someone's footsteps, for lack of a better idea. So that's what's going to make us or break us, is if we really live as ourselves and who we really are. So one of the main features here in 2020 that I want to get into, it's the double transit through Capricorn of Jupiter and Saturn, and then they're going to come together eventually at the end of the year, actually on the winter solstice, December 21st, 2020. Jupiter and Saturn are going to come together into a grand conjunction. So the grand conjunction is what is believed to be the Star of Bethlehem that that is talked about in the biblical nativity story, the birth of Jesus. So Saturn and Jupiter are both visible planets, and they look like big bright stars. So when you put these two planets conjuncted together, it's a bigger, unusually bright star. It's not like the Star of Bethlehem in the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, where forms like a giant cross in the sky, and it's lighting the night. But it's much brighter than stars usually are. It's brighter than Venus, in the evening and early in the morning. And this brightness is relative to us, because if you're looking at screens every day, and you're always, everywhere that you go throughout the day and night is lit, stars don't look very bright to you. But if you really get out in the dark and you observe the sky, this Saturn and Jupiter conjunction is unusually bright, for stars and visible planets. So anyway, the importance of this is that Saturn and Jupiter are both needed for manifestation, because Jupiter is our inspiration, it's our expansiveness, and it's our just our enthusiasm about doing things, about doing the things that we get to do, that we get excited about. And Saturn is all about practicality, and it's about doing what needs to be done. So you need both of these to manifest new things in your life, and to rearrange your life, and to set your life on the course that you want. So Jupiter, Jupiter has a lot to do with the fun. And Saturn is just kind of the thankless tasks that need to be done. So Saturn will reach its hand into a toilet to unclog it if it really needs to be done. It's not a thing people get excited about, but sometimes you have to do it. So those two planets represent a balance and a balanced mentality. If you're all enthusiasm and you're all inspiration, you're too fiery and you can't get practical things done. And then if you're too practical, you don't have the enthusiasm to initiate new things and to move forward. So you need the both, and you need them in roughly equal measures, equal doses. So another thing too here is it's interesting that this is going to happen on December 21st, which is it's Christmas time, it's winter solstice time, and the whole birth of Jesus is all about the rebirth of the sun that happens on December 25th. And that's why so many messiahs have been, hundreds of messiahs across the world through history have been born on December 25th, because they were sun gods. And the sun, in the northern hemisphere, the sun keeps going south, and on the 21st it reaches its lowest point, and it stays at that low point on the 22nd and 23rd and 24th, and on the 25th the sun moves north again towards the equator and starts moving north towards summer, and the days get longer. So interesting, we have this grand conjunction, this, Star of Bethlehem, right on the winter solstice. So, in these great conjunctions, they happen in 19-year cycles. So, the last one was, 2000 into 2001, where Saturn and Jupiter transited the same sign together and then had a grand conjunction. The last time there was this double transit and grand conjunction in Capricorn was 1960 to 61. So Capricorn is all about hierarchy, it's about authority, it's about government, it's about pyramidal, top-down hierarchy. So this had a lot to do with the upheaval of the 1960s. It's partly what brought it on. And, the 1960s, we saw a lot of change, and a lot of traditional institutions were challenged, like government and church and family and, just the definitions of, what it meant to be a man or a woman. And, the whole, just the conventions of just living a very traditional lifestyle like your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, that was all challenged, and people realize they have more options and they can live any way they want to live, and that's a really good thing. But we have to be mature enough to take advantage of this, and there was success during the 60s, but people kind of gave up too early in a way. I think the hippies and the flower children, they definitely did a lot, with their consciousness, with the love energy, the consciousness and the energy of love to end the Vietnam War and to help push the civil rights movement and get people of all colors and genders legal equality. But they gave up too early, and what you see is like a lot of people who were hippies during the 60s, they turned into yuppies and they became materialists. And a lot of old hippies too, they forgot the whole thing about unity, and they just became diehard Democrats, and they became just as hateful as as the most closed-minded Bible Belt conservatives you could ever find. So a lot of the old hippies fell into dualism, where it's just it's us versus them, and our side needs to get its way, and and there's nothing else, and the other side is a bunch of monsters. So there was a lot of success in the 1950s with this grand conjunction and this double transit energy, but people weren't mature enough to see it through, and a lot of people got really sidetracked, and they thought that sleeping around and doing drugs and getting drunk and just sort of hanging out and not working and not being a slave to the man was a victory in and of itself that was going to change the world. And that's not true. You have to follow things up, and you have to be mature, and you still have to be responsible. So the 60s were a mixed bag, and then a lot of things were hijacked too. Even the hippie movement was eventually hijacked. And really, when you look at the drug culture, the CIA and the deep state were part of that, because the whole popularization of LSD came from Timothy Leary, who was a Harvard professor. And he was a young, popular professor back then, and he was encouraging people to, do LSD and psychedelics and, and really, indulge in that. And the interesting thing is that, for one, Harvard is a recruiting ground for CIA. That and Georgetown are probably the two big universities. But another thing is, for probably 10, 15, even 20 years before Timothy Leary made LSD popular, CIA had been buying the entire production of LSD from the Swiss pharmaceutical company that made it. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but there were psychiatrists doing research for CIA, like Dr. Delgado, Dr. Cameron, and Dr. Sidney Gottlieb. So CIA was buying all of the LSD that was being mass produced in the entire world, and they were sitting on it. So it's kind of a funny thing when all of a sudden a university professor at a university that recruits people for CIA, and where a lot of career CIA people went to school. It's funny where that's the source of the popularization of LSD. So, and LSD was something that had been, promoted in Nazi Germany, and the whole, consciousness expansion. That stuff is not bad in and of itself. I don't like it personally. I think all it does is it sends all the aura, all the energy in your aura up to your head. So it's a very mental experience, and I prefer really, body-centered spirituality, like Taoism. So, and when you do psychedelics, all the energy goes to your head, that's in your aura, and then you bleed energy. So you're getting weaker, and you're getting more unhealthy the more you do that. In shamanistic, tribal cultures, psychedelics were meant to be done maybe once or twice in your life, just to snap you out of the, materialistic consciousness. So the whole push to do this stuff over and over, that came from CIA, and CIA was founded in part, probably half of the founding members roughly were Nazis who were given war crimes immunity, who were brought to the United States. And the Nazis really built the United States after World War II. They built CIA, NSA, the space program, the airlines, the Environmental Protection Agency. They started, food stamps was an idea that came from Nazi Germany, and heating assistance. So none of these programs are bad, but the whole point is that people don't see the origins of things. So, even Nazi Germany even had kind of a hippie movement going on in the 1930s and 40s. The government promoted free love, and they promoted, people getting in touch with nature, and they promoted LSD, and they promoted the practice of yoga and meditation. So, these things get very easily hijacked by, kind of the hidden hand. So that's the big thing here. And there's an interesting thing with the peace symbol that I'm always fascinated with is the peace symbol is a corruption of the Elhaj rune. It's also called Algiz or Algiz. And this rune, this ancient Germanic symbol, is a symbol of a healer or a shaman that's basically, has the hands towards the heavens and is channeling, energy from the heavens to protect his or her self and to protect their community. So the peace symbol was an inversion of this. So I think of it as it's like an upside down cross or an upside down crucifix. Because when runes are inverted, basically the energy is blocked. So the peace symbol is this inverted rune of spiritual protection, and it has a circle around it that confines it. So it's blocked, this energy, this protective spiritual energy is blocked and confined. So that's an interesting thing that I see with the peace symbol from the 60s. I think people were advancing a symbol that they didn't know about, and they were giving energy to something that they really didn't understand. So, and the other thing with the 60s too is, people just, they didn't see it through. They let the mentality that really did a lot of good things kind of die out, and that's the thing in the Western world is we don't have more than 3 or 4 years of attention span. It's like that with wars. It's like you have to get them over with quickly, otherwise the people just forget about it. So, it's like been in Afghanistan for almost 20 years now. So people hardly remember that there's even a war going on. So, we have to be mature, and we have to stay engaged and not be manipulated. So that's a mouthful. So that's a big thing, and and this was a big thing in 2019 where people were very wrapped up with what the correct thing is to do. And people were like, oh, well, if you're not a vegan and you don't do yoga and you don't, say namaste 20 times a day, you're not a good person. And on the other side of people, like, if you're not a Christian and you're not a Republican, you're not a good person. So we need to steer away from this, because these grand conjunction energies like we had in the 60s, that drive, peace and love and, the advancement of society, they easily run out of steam, and they go off track, and they get hijacked, and they get kind of, corrupted. So another thing about this double transit of Saturn and Jupiter that's going on is that, so around, I can't remember the exact date, but it's late March. By April 1st, Jupiter is going to transit into Capricorn and join Saturn. But then Jupiter is going to retrograde on the 14th of May, and it's going to stay retrograde till mid-September. I think it's September 13th. So Jupiter is actually going to retrograde back into Sagittarius. And then Saturn's going to have a retrograde of its own on September 9th, and that's going to last till November the 14th. Saturn's going to stay in Capricorn, but it's going to appear to be moving backwards from the Earth. But Jupiter will, in fact, retrograde back into Sagittarius from Capricorn. So, since Jupiter and Saturn are called the social planets that really govern society, rather than the personal planets, like the inner planets are called the personal planets, and the two outer visible planets, Jupiter and Saturn, are called social planets. So, since these social planets are going to be retrograde for a few months of 2020, society is going to be very confused, and things are going to be very confusing, and we're not really going to understand, what's, especially in politics, things are going to be very confused about what different leaders are doing, what we think they're doing versus what they're actually doing. They're not going to know what's going on themselves with things that they're involved in. It's going to be a very confusing time. We'll even feel this in our personal lives, where we won't really know what the hell is going on. So just be prepared for that there's going to be this confusion, because Jupiter and Saturn are going to be behaving like they were in the previous signs. So Jupiter is going to take on, again, energies of Sagittarius and Scorpio, and then Saturn is going to take on the energy of Sagittarius again. So, and by November the 14th, both planets are going direct again, and on the 25th of November, Jupiter will again enter Capricorn, and Saturn and Jupiter will be back on their double transit in Capricorn and moving forward. So really from May 14th, when Jupiter starts a retrograde, through the 25th of November after the election, things are going to be very confusing. This is going to be the most confused, haywire, crazy, chaotic presidential election season there ever was. People are going to be making all kinds of wild predictions about what's going on and what states are going to who and who won the damn thing, and it's going to be all over the place, and just everything in society around this is going to be the same thing. The media is going to say that Nancy Pelosi's going to do one thing, she's actually going to do something else. She's not going to know what's going on. It's going to be like this with the president, the Senate, everybody. And all over the world it's going to be like this too, and we're already seeing this, with the Iran thing. The media was all hysterical that World War III was starting, but really the United States will never take the battlefield against Iran, and the government of Iran will collapse nonetheless. But there'll be all these rumors of, really extreme stuff going on, but that's not going to happen. And really, a little thing about Iran, from what I can see, President Trump got a guarantee from Iran that they're not going to defend it. President Trump got a guarantee from China that China will not defend Iran if the United States bombs it or blockades it or does whatever else. Because China has put, hundreds of millions of dollars into building oil terminals and oil infrastructure so they can get the oil out of Iran and send it to China to fuel the economy. So, you know, Trump already discussed this with the Chinese, and, you know, basically the Chinese will, when the government of Iran changes, when the regime changes, China will get to keep all their infrastructure and operate all their infrastructure, and they won't, you know, they won't lose out on this. And I think they also made a deal to guarantee China will get all the oil it needs from the United States, which is now exporting oil. So China and Russia are not going to jump into this. There's not going to be a World War III over Iran. I think the wars in 2020 and in 2021 will be internal conflicts. You'll have civil wars, revolutions, riots, upheavals. So, and what else do we have here? So again, you know, I have to stress it that, you know, this double transit of Jupiter and Saturn, this great conjunction, is not going to hand us a beautiful future on a silver platter. It's not going to spoon feed it to us. It's going to give us the potential energy we need to make really awesome changes for ourselves, for the country, for the whole world. But we're going to have to earn it. You know, it's not a matter of voting for the right party or doing yoga or, you know, going to church every Sunday or being a vegan or whatever. You know, you're going to have to kind of mind your own business and really improve your own life, and, you know, make sure that you're living the life that is genuine to you and that you really want, that your heart is really in. You improve the world by improving yourself. Another thing I wanted to get into with Jupiter is that due to the Jupiter retrograde in 2020, Jupiter will conjunct Pluto 3 times. So, you know, like I said, Jupiter gives us our inspiration and our expansiveness and our enthusiasm. And Pluto is a god of the underworld, so Pluto makes us deal with unpleasant things we'd rather not deal with. So Jupiter is also our higher consciousness. So in this year, we're going to be aware of a lot of hidden things, you know, and we're going to be forced to deal with things that we didn't want to deal with, you know, things in our personal business and, you know, things that have been going on in society and within our political organizations, our religions, educational institutions, and, you know, our financial system. Pluto is going to kind of temper our enthusiasm in a way. You know, Pluto is, if we're being delusional about things that we're excited about and things that we want to do, Pluto's not going to allow us to do it. You know, things that we want to do that are not grounded in reality, views that we have that are not grounded in reality, are going to blow up in our face. You know, basically Pluto is saying to Jupiter, whoa, wait a minute, you know, I'm not going to just let you willy-nilly do whatever you want. You know, we need to discuss how realistic this is and how grounded in reality your plans are. So, and the other thing too is, you know, Jupiter and Pluto coming together 3 times, it's just we're going to see all kinds of scandals, all kinds of dark secrets flying out of the woodwork. We're going to see that, you know, powerful people, even ones that, you know, we thought were very progressive and friends of the people, were involved in facilitating and even making money on the drug trade, human trafficking, war for profit. You know, that's a thing that's coming out where families, Gold Star families who've lost family members in war, are suing defense companies for basically bribing the Taliban not to attack their facilities in Afghanistan. So they've violated the anti-terrorism laws of the United States, and they've aided and abetted terrorism. So some huge things going on. Sex crimes are going to be huge. You know, Ghislaine Maxwell is now under an FBI investigation, and she's kind of running for her life at this point because she knows a lot of dirt on a lot of really powerful people. You know, everyone, you know, they like to point out that Donald Trump was at Epstein's party, but Bill Clinton was also there. He flew on Epstein's plane 26 times, according to the FAA. You know, not according to Fox News. So, and you know, another thing that's been under wraps, the whole UFO alien thing. That's been coming out. The Navy has been saying that, their pilots have been observing it and are now encouraging their pilots to report incidents of UFOs. And a British scientist just came out, was in People magazine, and she said aliens are definitely real and they may already live here on Earth. So some major information about this is going to be leaked into the public, and it's going to be admitted. Mind control, MK Ultra, that's going to be a big thing that comes out. Media manipulation is part of this, but just mind manipulation. How governments and corporations, military intelligence community, how they weaponize psychology to rule countries. So that's going to come out, like I said, the impeachment, that's going to fizzle, that's going nowhere, and it's going to come out that a lot of these people who have been leading this impeachment, their family members were making money in Ukraine, and so they were committing insider trading. Now, the bad thing about this is Congress pretty much voted unanimously several years ago to make themselves exempt from insider trading laws, but their family members are not. So another big thing here for 2020 is that we're coming back to kind of the 9/11 time. There are some very striking similarities to the astrology during 9/11. So K2, K2 symbolized by the headless body that has no desires. It's all about spirituality and liberation from material existence. The south node of the moon. K2 and Mars are back in Sagittarius, in the same part of Sagittarius that they were on 9/11. And on February 12th, K2 and Mars are going to be in Mula, which is a nakshatra. Nakshatras are mini constellations that make up, there are 27 of them, that make up the 12 signs of the zodiac. So Mula is the nakshatra of destruction and of destructive events. It's symbolized by the root ball of a tree or a plant. So it's about a tree being uprooted, and when things are, and destruction in nature is all about getting rid of the old so that something new can take its place. So on February 12th, K2 and Mars come back to Mula, just like they were on 9/11. And this was a driving force in the 9/11 attacks. No matter what you believe about those and why they happened and who did them, they were a driving force. I think there's more to that whole story than came out in the media, but I could really digress on that. So somewhere from the 12th of February to the 23rd of February, there's going to be some sort of a, it looks like there's going to be some sort of a terrorist attack. Rahu is back in Gemini like it was on 9/11, so this could very well involve travel, airlines, mass transportation. So I definitely advise people from the 12th of February to the 23rd, you might want to just lay low, not fly anywhere, unless I can look at your chart and see if you might get caught up in something this year. But you'd have to talk to me about that. Anyway, so and K2 and Mars, when you put them together, that's all kinds of violent potential, and that's extremist violence potential, because K2, when it's not in a good condition, can be a terrorist and an extremist, an ideological extremist. K2 in Sagittarius is very extremist. So when you put it with Mars, you add the volatility and the violence. So some 9/11-like event is likely to happen in February. I've got some, I did that remote view back in November and I saw a Times Square attack. I think that never took place. I think the Jersey City shooters were supposed to be part of that, and the whole thing fizzled. That Jersey City detective approached those people, and then they started that shootout in Jersey City. They never got to Times Square. They never got to use the pipe bombs that were in that moving van that they were driving. So, but who knows what's going to happen. So, and we have some solar eclipses that are very like 2001 as well. So, time has a circular nature to it. It's not a perfect circle. It kind of moves forward too, so it's like a spiral, but certain themes come around, especially with the transits of Rahu and Ketu. They take 18 years to do a lap around the zodiac. So we're kind of back to 9/11. So, I'm trying to think what else. One thing too with this whole Mars and Ketu and Mula in February, you have Saturn in Pluto in Capricorn around that time. Pluto rules atomic energy, and again, Ketu and Mars and Mula, could set the stage for some sort of a nuclear detonation. So that's up to us to prevent. We have to prevent this with how we live our lives daily and how we get along with other people. So we need to cut the self-righteousness and the extremism and the dualistic one-sidedness where we think our side, our party, our political leaders, our religion has all the answers, and anyone who disagrees with them or with us is a monster. We need to get away from that, because we're going to have some sort of extreme attack if we keep that up. So, look in yourself, improve yourself to improve the world. So, the 2020s are definitely going to teach us some hard lessons here about how destructive, dualism and extremism is. So, and we can mitigate how hard these lessons are, whether these hard lessons are extremely extreme or they're more like speed bumps and we can take them in stride. So, but getting back to that December 26th solar eclipse in Sagittarius, that set the stage for 2020, for 2021, and even for the decade. And the eclipse showed us how radical and how extremist we are. But not everyone got the message, not everyone saw it. Not everyone was able to, step back and, take a look inside and, make those changes. That eclipse too had a lot to do with just a destruction and the reshaping of the ego. The ego, it's become a dirty word in the new age, and just in modern Western English-speaking lexicon these days. But the ego is something we need to live in the physical world. You need, in the 3D world, you need an ego. You need a persona. Persona was a word from mask in Greek. You need your face, your outward face that you show the world. But this eclipse and 2020 is going to be breaking our egos down to their core and aligning them with our souls. So if we go with this process, we're going to have a good year. We're going to have a good decade. If we don't go with it, a lot of things are going to blow up in our face, and we're going to keep blaming other people like we've been doing forever. Politics, religion, there's a lot of blame games that go on in there. So, we need to be aware of this. Otherwise, we're going to make life a lot harder for ourselves and for others than it needs to be. So, that's a hell of a mouthful. I'm going to leave it at that. It's a clean hour. So, my website is thecosmicalchemist.com. If you want to see how these current events, these current astrological events affect you specifically, I can help you with this. I do Vedic astrology readings, and I sit down with you. If you're in my local area, I can meet with you. Otherwise, we meet remotely over Zoom or Skype, something like that, and I show you how the current events in astrology are affecting your birth chart. And I custom build a meditation for you to help you to, start changing your unconscious mind and your reflexive patterns and your attitudes and your dispositions that you're not really aware of. I also do rune readings, and with the runes I make a mind map where you can see where things are going well for you and where the energy is blocked in your mind. And I can help you to remove those blockages and really help you to, start building the life that you want to live. And I also have some downloads available, some video downloads. I have some Qigong videos that I shot, that I made myself. And Qigong is a really good mind-body practice to help you to get in tune with your body's energy and to, get into your unconscious mind and start changing your thinking patterns and your emotional patterns. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and I'll be talking to you by February, if not before. So thanks again, and have a good one.